Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Carve Your Own Fucking Path, a podcast made to inspire you to create a life and business on your own terms. You'll hear candid interviews with people who have boldly decided to blaze their own trail, and the occasional solo show with me, your host. I'm Willa McDonough, on-camera coach, storyteller, and remote video producer. 5 years ago, I moved from my home base of San Francisco to the coast of Portugal, taking a big leap into the unknown. Some called it courageous. I called it carving my own fucking path. Today, I live in Lisbon and run a business that elevates your online presence, helping you show up confidently on camera to create videos that showcase your brand and personality so you can get more visibility and attract clients by being yourself. If you're just starting out in business or you've been doing it for a while, you're sure to pick up tidbits of actionable advice and hopefully feel inspired by stories from people who have chosen the unconventional and sometimes messy path. And if you've been waiting for a sign to start carving your own fucking path, this is it. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for joining the podcast, Carve Your Own Fucking Path. So grateful to have you here and sharing your story with.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, because we have been on a long journey together. It feels like it's just starting, to be honest, but.
Absolutely.
So Simone Silverstein is a dear friend and a client, and she lives outside San Francisco with 2 children. She works as an editorial director at a very fashionable design brand. And we started to work together early on in this year. So this is BC, before Corona. And her goal was to bring out her creative side. And Simone, I'll let you tell this in your own words, but your goal was really to explore and dive deeper into fully like unearthing your creative expression, which is something that you've done throughout your life, but you felt like it just wasn't, coming. It wasn't a cohesive, it wasn't package, right? And so we're exploring different ways, and a lot of it was coming out to performing and on stage and around comedy. So that's what we started working on earlier on this year, and did some NLP, which was a first.
Yes.
For Simone. Yes. And so just tell us about your experience and who you are a little bit more.
Okay. Well, I'm very, very happy to be here. Appreciate you having me. Also appreciate you being my coach and friend. And as you pointed out earlier in the year, we started to work on some of the unearthing my creative self. It's always there. Anybody who knows me would say, I mean, you're so creative. What do you need to unearth? You're doing it. Mm-hmm. And I would agree that there's always something interesting going on either in my head or something that I'm putting out there. But what was important was more of a focus and a drive towards something. And as you mentioned, stage has always been a part of my life. Actually, from the earliest of early, that's where I remember shining as a first grader, kindergartner. And I find that going back to those places for children, or when you were a child, and really knowing what kind of gift you brought to the world early on can be a really powerful way to move through your future. So I just know that's there. And I've done a lot of improvisation and acting, and really just feel really comfortable in front of groups. Mm-hmm. And I had fallen out of that. And I work, as you said, and I have a creative job. But what was important was finding what was going to come out of me effortlessly. And, well, I shouldn't say it would be effortless. Of course, there's effort in all of it, but the way in which it would flow out of me, I was looking for more ease and a direction. Mm-hmm. And, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. I move a lot. And so, but where am I going? What am I focusing on? So that's where we began. And then we did a little NLP. And so I'm somebody who's been in therapy for most of my life, like some 30 some years. And it has served me very well. And I'm also a seeker of self-improvement and creativity and bettering myself. And so when you were working with NLP or started working with NLP, I thought, yeah, let's do it. Let's try it. And what I can say is that it's an extremely unique technique that it really requires both, I'm sure the practitioner, the client, to really trust that what you're doing has this sort of greater meaning that is in our subconscious, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of what you do, which is when you're working with someone's subconscious, it's by its very nature not as tangible and obvious as the way you would experience a therapy, for example. So there's like there was a real opening for me in even seeing another modality for self-improvement or growth. So I really have enjoyed that. And the longer we've worked together, the easier that's gotten on me. But it wasn't easy when I first did it with you. That first time I was really unsure of what I was doing.
Right. You're out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. I was out of my comfort zone, which I trust you. So it felt really okay. And I really trust that when you're looking at yourself, there is really nothing that can go wrong. I mean, you may need to unearth some things that are a little troublesome, but ultimately there's nothing wrong. It's only good that can come.
That's true. Definitely. And it's always, at the top, I see it as like kind of an iceberg thing. You have let's say one thing you want to focus on. This is my goal. I want to be on stage. I want, to focus in on that aspect. And then you just keep peeling the layers back. And then it goes deeper and deeper. So for you now, this was back in earlier this year. So, life changed dramatically. Yes. So tell us about your experience with COVID and what shifted for you.
Well, like everybody in the whole world, life was different for me one day from the next, and having 2 kids, and I'm a single mom. Their dad's in the picture, but we're not together anymore. So that idea of having 2 people in my home that either needed schooling or attention, on top of the work that I do for my job, on top of working on myself and diving deeper into my own creative well. So that's a lot already. And then, there's friends, and then there's family. And so you just piled it on. And I have to say that here we are 6 months in, and the piles are even higher. It doesn't mean they're insurmountable though. Like maybe there's a way through. Like I would start to see these like, okay, I know there's a way through this, even though right now it is really challenging. So I would say, if we want to get into where I got to around, COVID changed everything for people's jobs. Some people had jobs where they lost them. Some people had to stay in their job and work in a very dangerous or scary place like frontline workers. Then there were people who were able to keep their job, which I'm grateful I could, but our team we were leaner and meaner, and the demands got more and more important. Like we need to stay afloat. This business has to keep going. And you are one of the people that is here to help that happen. And with that, you get the wonderful responsibility, but you get the, oh my God, I have everybody's not everybody, but my team's relying on me, and I need to show up. So there was a lot of growing in there around who am I when I show up with these mountains that of stuff climbing, how do I show up and stay strong and find how to get through and use myself as that and, to keep going. And then of course, having you was really important during this time, because we would touch in and we would either, we weren't working directly on anything COVID related, but just circumstances that might have been heightened due to the way we're all living now. One of which was it feels like half of the world is either overeating, over drinking, this concept that you talk about, which is buffering.
Buffering. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yes. So buffering. And so Simone is very, you're very self-aware, and the concept of buffering is something that you and I have used in our dialogues together, because we both listen to, this other life coach, Brooke Castillo, and she has coined the term buffering. And she specializes or mainly focuses on over drinking and overeating. And so, we've kind of thrown this word back and forth a little bit. But honestly, and again, I'll, let you tell your experience, but it was something that was not looked at as an issue. I guess it's kind of, you could say, yeah, I'm really buffering. I'm, stressed. COVID is brutal, all these things happening, but really, taking it a step further, which brings us to where we are now. And so about a month ago, or less actually, you came to me and you said, I really think that pot smoking, which has been something you've done for many, many years, just as a part of your lifestyle, that you wanted to give it a break.
Yep.
And you, okay, so tell us about that. So what is your experience with buffering and then the substance, of your choice?
So as Willow pointed out, we would liberally throw out the word, very self-awareness of like, oh, I'm buffering. Like, I just know I am. And acknowledging that and not necessarily needing to change it that day or even the next day or the next day.
Right.
But really just recognizing, I know what I'm doing. I have 2 kids. I have a lot going on, and there could be no other reason I'm doing this other than that. And a willingness to see it that way, not necessarily ready to do something about it, but a willingness to see it that way. And so we would throw that around a lot. And I also knew that it wasn't serving me. I knew that it's not rocket science. I knew it wasn't serving me. Occasionally it actually would serve me. And when it does serve you, can be a real mind fuck, if I can say that.
Oh yeah.
Because, great. Here, I'm going to
carve your own fucking path.
Fucking path, right. It's a mind fucking path. So a real mind fuck, because there would be times where I would actually, I think this is classic with any sort of substance. The initial is what you keep going after. The beginning of it. Oh, I feel so creative. Like the first 10 minutes after I smoke weed, and then it's just like you like peter out. But you're chasing that 10 minutes where you were creative. And so anyway, there were times where that actually would serve me. But ultimately, what I started to feel as I'm 40, almost 44. I'm not losing my mind yet, but I'm like wondering some days, like, am I a little foggy because I'm 43, or am I a little foggy because I smoked weed last night? And what is contributing to this? And I would see and hear people, and you're one of them. You stopped drinking 9 months ago, 9. And watching you find clarity and really peel back the layers, as you said, and almost like part the fog. It's like, it's inspiring. And we've all been, I know you've been in a party and somebody's just like, you don't drink? And you're like, no. And it's like, we'll get there, but it's been 15 days that I haven't been buffering. But the point is that you kind of can't even, you just like can't even quite comprehend it. And there's almost like an envy of like, oh, you can relate. Somebody said to you, oh, I wish I could do that. You're like, you can do that.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, I just got to I knew somewhere in me that the work we were doing to unearth my creative self was very likely just a little bit fogged over by like we're like circling at SFO airport because the fog is too heavy and like we can't land for a landing. Or like there's too much murk on top of the water and you're trying to come up and see clearly. And I just think that the curiosity around, what is this, is what really got me to go, okay, let's just do this.
Mm-hmm. And so the identity work that we did and are continuing to do, I mean, it's definitely a core theme and focus was, I remember just saying, well, the Simone 2.0, and at this point you're 3.0, let's be honest.
Let's
3.0, this highest, like this best version of yourself.
Yeah.
Is she smoking weed and feeling the fog, waking up, having these moments like, oh, wait, piecing together, sometimes, what had happened or all that, let's just say the negative consequences, which they were starting to really show, where the fun part was just, it was more imbalanced. And every time, we talk about it, you were like, no, she's not smoking. So what was the turning point for you? Like, was there an aha moment where you had this moment of clarity? Like, I gotta take a break from this.
I've had times where I've said, this isn't serving me and I'm not going to do this. And it's been a very like on, off switch. And, this time felt different, probably because I felt like I had you as a guide, because you had given up something that was a habit of your own. And I thought, okay, if I have somebody who I mean, it's been a long time, but it's not like you gave up 9 years ago and you can't still access what it felt like to be somebody who was, you still have that access of what it might have felt like to have a drink every day, or, let's be real. You were not like crazy person, but again, neither was I. And, so knowing that I could just go, all right, let's just do this. Like I said, I don't know that there was the breaking point was a little bit like job. There's mounting responsibility at job. There is mounting responsibility at home with kids. There is a collective shitstorm outside, both environmentally and energetically. And I'm like, why? No, like I don't need to add to this space. Even though when you're doing it, you might actually think that what you're doing, buffering, is sort of helping that. It's sort of easing that. But the trick is to go, is it? And to ask yourself, am I capable of doing this? So I said to you, I'm doing it. So here's what's different. I have given up both alcohol and marijuana. And that is what's different, because in my past I've taken breaks, and mostly breaks of marijuana, because alcohol has never really felt like it's a problem for me. But again, I don't know unless you try. And so were you smoking? So let's talk about your buffering, like your habits. Let's say you weren't buffering every time. Like every time you have a glass of wine, let's not label it as buffering, right? Yeah.
Or, I mean, can you talk about your habits? And then also, if you can tell us a little bit about the thought patterns that you're having, like what is it a certain time of day that would trigger, oh, good, it's time for a drink, or I'm going to smoke because I'm feeling this way. Can you kind of explain a little?
My habits are, one of the beauties around taking this break is from substance is that you have a clearer mind, and that clearer mind will allow me to see further, and it can help me see further back, and it can help me see in all directions. And one of the things I'm doing is trying to be aware of what thoughts might have been contributing more to that decision to have a drink or have a smoke. Because when you're doing it, you can be aware of it. It's not like it's impossible, but one of the whole reasons of doing this is to find more clarity. So you're going to understand things greater and see more if you don't have the cloud of these other things being put into your body. So I would say that my habit was something along the lines of, I'm a mom of two. I think I've said that 400 times, but it really has impacted, that feeling of like, oh my God, I have so many things and responsibilities. And for God's sakes, I can have a drink at the end of the day. So I would often have wine. Like I said, I hadn't really considered alcohol as being something that, I often could put it down or just go, I don't want the rest of that. But marijuana is, and has always been a real choice place for me to turn. And I was sort of an all in, all off, all in, all off, and really didn't find my favorite, moderation wasn't really a part of that. Mm-hmm. Now, it ought to be said that I am fully functioning. Yeah. I always was. I'm thriving in so many ways. And like, I guess on paper, it's like, everything's fine. It looks good. You're doing great. And I think that's one of the tricky things about somebody making the decision to say, I don't want to do this, is it truly is coming from wait, I don't want to do this. I don't want to. It's not that my kids are waking up to a mom who's wasted. Right. It's not that I'm not getting my kids breakfast in the morning. All that is happening and more. But what do I wake up feeling? And I will say the greatest gift that this gives me is it is one or two, or however you want to define it, less layers of questioning of, did this contribute to this? Well, no, because I didn't use it.
Yeah. Am
I tired today because of that? Nope, it's not that. Awesome. That's one less thing to worry about. It's just it almost carves your own fucking path because there's less debris in the way. Mm-hmm.
Great visual. I could just see that the whole thing, because it's like, again, it's that the clearer you, the more confident, more creative, all these things that you are. This isn't about like becoming someone else. It's just like taking all the layers, some of these layers away. And what about, okay, so you were smoking, let's say, every day and having a drink, like one drink a day kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what about, was there any like shame around it or guilt around smoking or any, I know with alcohol was kind of like, it's just, that was never maybe even considered buffering for you, but you could clearly define like pot smoking as buffering.
Yeah. So the shame, so it's interesting. I live in a town that is known around many places as being this incredibly coveted place to live in the Bay Area. And it's so phenomenal. And I grew up here. But it has become fairly homogenous, wealthy,
white.
I mean, we could go on. Yeah. That's why you live in Portugal. I don't always, so I may look that way. I mean, I recognize I am white. I live in Mill Valley. I have a nice lifestyle. I am one of them, except I think I'm not because I'm from here, but I would often want to just like separate myself from that person, that mom, those women, not straight up separate myself, like not talk to them, just internally, more of like, well, that's not me. I know, so smoking pot. And when it started in the early time, it would almost be like my little edge, my little rebellion. Mm. It would be like, I have no idea if this is true, but it would almost be like, oh, nobody would ever suspect that she smokes every night. Mm-hmm. Look at how high functioning and it was almost like a badge that's a really weird way to say it, but in some ways it was a little bit of a badge of like rebellion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get it. You're different.
I'm different. It's
a bit of a shock. It's not the Chardonnay at night. It's like, no, it's a joint.
Totally. Like I roll in smelling like weed. You have a little rosé.
Right.
So that's one of the things I can identify with that got me feeling almost it got me around the shame, if you will. It almost made it feel like it was okay. Now, again, a lot of this is heightened because I have more awareness around it. It didn't feel this way so intensely at the time. But then there would just be shame around. Sometimes I would think like, I think I remember saying to you, I had heard that if like your grandma, if you had to say to your grandma what you did, like, oh, grandma, every night I smoke weed and to get away from my children and to like try to cope with the world. Like if you couldn't feel good and grandma wouldn't be like, good job. Like, ask yourself if that's something you want to keep doing. Not you need to feel shame, you're so bad, but just like how would it feel to go, hey kids, guess what? For the first 10 years of your life, I smoked pot every day because I needed a break. Like, do you feel like you could really show up and feel good about making a statement like that? Probably not. So there was always that little voice in me that said, this can't be helping me.
Okay. So, and that little voice, where do you think that's coming from? Is it your subconscious that knows best? Generally it wants, has our best interest.
Yeah. But it was, yes, I do. I mean, I think from the positive angle, it was my subconscious. The more negative, it was the shame of like, what would happen? I mean, honestly, like I'm not a real like doomsdayer. I'm not like freaking out about every last thing. I find myself a fairly chill, relaxed. I don't know about relaxed, but fairly chill in my thinking. But then I was like, what would happen if what's it going to take? Am I going to have like a car accident? And then that's going to make me have to really take a hard look at this? Or is it going to be my kids find a joint? Like, what is it? And that there can be shame around that because you're like, am I like playing with fire right now? And so, yeah.
That's really interesting because it's like, you have this consciousness that it's not serving you and this voice that's telling you, this is not your highest self. And to be honest, I want to ask you in a second, about that, but it's, did you feel like it was a vicious cycle? Like you just, you didn't have a reason enough to stop.
No, I did not have a reason enough to stop. That's a really, really important point. Life is, like I said, on paper, life is good. Life is real good. It wasn't enough of a problem. And I often would have people who were like, I don't think you have a problem with that. And it was almost became like, well, wait, who needs to decide I have a problem with that? I do.
Yeah.
And so yes, it was, and also, I mean, let's be major, is that marijuana has become like this insanely wonderful new thing.
Designer.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I kept thinking, like, of all the times you're going to stop smoking pot, you're going to do it when it's now like the thing to do. And like, I can call somebody and I can get pot that in an hour. Like, what a shitty time to make this choice.
I know. Well, so I don't know if we mentioned, but Simone is taking a break for 40 days.
Yes.
So you're taking a break from both pot and alcohol for 40 days, and you're going to reassess, at the end. So again, the whole thing about this process and this challenge, the Stop Buffering Challenge, which I haven't even mentioned yet, but it's really about taking a break without making any big claims. I mean, this is all just through my personal experience as well. It's like saying you're not going to do something ever again feels so huge. Unless, again, we're not talking about like severe alcoholism, drug problems, or eating disorders. Definitely that's not my zone of genius at all. But it's really just this process of kind of peeling things back, taking a break, and then reassessing consciously and stepping into this higher version of yourself. So my question was before, this concept of bettering yourself is not new to you. You have done a lot of personal development, you've read a lot of books and done all the things. So was the identity work that we did, and that just the conversations we had, did that also play into your decision to give this a try?
Yes. And, one of the things I think about the work that you do specifically with the NLP is so much of it is on a subconscious level, that when it does impact you, the ways in which clearly it's been impacting, because we've been working on this for several months, and it was sort of this, okay, I'm going to do this. It wasn't, we weren't working towards me stopping buffering. We were working on identity work, and we were working on, which in its very nature began to kind of go deeper and say, I kind of think that I've got to let go of some of these things in order to keep pursuing the work that we're doing. And so I think what's really interesting about the work you do is that it is on I say a lower level, but maybe I mean a higher level, or underneath. And it's like less, I think once we did some work on the buffering piece, we can talk about that. That was very tangible. I can really speak to that. Right. Some of the other work was sort of kind of getting in there. It was just sort of starting to, like, as you say, carving little new neural pathways. I mean, carve your own fucking neural pathway.
I love that. It's a new side brand.
And so I do believe that it absolutely has had an impact. And what I would say about that work is that one who works with you trusts you. What you do is you trust that the work you're doing is moving you forward, even when it isn't like, oh, okay, now I woke up and I have a completely different Simone 2.0 or 3.0. It's like, it's a real, it's trusting the person you're working with, but it's also trusting that you are working towards a better you. And I would say that your work has absolutely pushed me in that direction. And the Simone 2.0, 3.0, like, it's just was sort of like, how are we going to get there if I don't make some changes? And so I hope that answers that question.
Definitely. And you really, I have to say, you came to it on your own. And I think that's like the most powerful piece, because when someone's telling you, any shoulds, I always say, stop shoulding over yourself, because no shoulding. And it has to it has to have a bigger purpose. Any kind of change that we make, it's coming from this. You can change your environment, which happened for us. Corona changed everything for us without our choice. But then now making these changes, it's like going to the levels of, well, what are your belief systems around it? What do you value? And if you value creativity and clarity and being present, being a good mom, being all these things, and then checking in with that, and then identity and the purpose. So whenever you make a choice, again, these are all kind of the key points. And it's a timing piece as well. I think sometimes for many years, even, we're like, that probably is going to be better for me, but not right now. So it's kind of like everything aligned. So you've been 2 weeks now, 15 days without buffering.
Yep.
So, congratulations. I've been incredibly proud of you, and I've just loved seeing the transformation.
Thank you.
Because it is definitely palpable. Yes. You don't have. Okay. So what has been your experience so far?
So 15 days is definitely the most I've ever gone with removing that, both alcohol and pot from my life. So while it feels like, oh, it's only 15 days, it also is like, oh, that's pretty cool. And as we've noted, there's a lot that can happen in, 2 weeks, things have moved out of the system and starting to operate in a lot more clarity. And I would say that happens, a few days into it. It's just that the longer you go, the more clarity there is. And so my experience has been, I said this a little bit earlier, but one of the greatest gifts that this offers is that you have one less question, one less, am I tired because of that? Or, and I used to, it's not like I would wake up and find out that I had, called my ex-husband and screamed at him or something. It's not like
no blackouts.
Yes, it was nothing like that, which again can speak more towards like, oh, it was almost a total functioning fine, so why stop? But it was like, I remember I was watching a video and before I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning and I went to open my computer and I realized that I had been watching that video, and I completely forgot that I had been watching that video before I went to bed. It was a very innocuous thing. So it was, again, who cares? Mm-hmm. But just the clarity in, it's just one less variable. We so much swirls in our head and we ask ourselves so many questions throughout the day. And it's like, just to be able to confidently be like, nope, to one of them, mm-hmm. or nope, to two of them, is so freeing. And then there was also this extreme curiosity that I had around people who would be like, oh, but the joys on the other side are so much better than and I'm like, what in the fuck is that? What do you mean?
What do you mean about the joys on the other side?
Oh, it's not drinking is so much more fun than drinking. Or, I have more fun now than I ever did. Or
bullshit.
Right. I was like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And what I will say is that it may be that, that the sustained fun or the sustained positive feelings or that there's something about the sustainability that makes those statements true now that I'm not buffering. It's like, oh, rather than 10 minutes of pure cataclysmic brain craziness of oh, that was the coolest thought I ever had and I've saved the world. And then an hour of not feeling great or 4 hours of not feeling great. You have more sustained, even thoughts and energy. Mm-hmm. It sort of carries it further and it's like a drug, you can just go back to your logic of what you've heard about drugs. You go up, you crash, you go up, you crash. And, whether somebody's shooting heroin or smoking weed, they're drugs. And so is there something similar happening in both? And what can I learn from finding some peace? I mean, it's just a little more peaceful.
Yeah.
I've been staying up later, which for some people is a problem, but me, I go to bed really early.
She was in bed by 8:30, I think.
Yeah.
Most nights.
And then the other thing that it does is I found myself to be more relaxed. I can do nothing better, which is again, for some people, the opposite of what they're trying to do. But in my case, see, this is not a one size fits all.
Right.
In my case, I was noticing that I was busying myself because I couldn't really live with, it was just there was just so much going on in my head. And without weed in particular, because I really felt like that was what it did to me, is it would almost give me anxiety. And I was enjoyed the anxiety until I didn't.
Uh-huh.
And now that I don't have that, if I have anxiety, it's because I have anxiety around the actual issue, or I have anxiety around, it's the purity of that is really powerful.
It's so powerful.
I was stressed yesterday. I had to get my kids to school today. It was a total shitstorm. And I'm okay, this isn't a time when one would call for buffering. And I see why, because maybe it would almost be a little more palpable, because it would be oh, this is sort of fun, or, but to not have that and to just be okay, you're stressed because you have a reason to be stressed. Mm-hmm. And that's fine enough.
What other ways, or have you found other ways to handle stress? Like, and it's been 2 weeks, but again, with yesterday, have you implemented any new habits? Of course, we work on the morning routine and things like that,
yes.
but
your morning routine. So I had started to implement parts of your morning routine. And what that did was start to put a structure around my morning and also some of my night routine. I found, and I still find, that what that did was it gave me something to use. I found I did some of it like step by step for maybe a few days. And I went, okay, now I'm going to sort of like gravitate towards the things in here that really
you resonate with.
I feel like I want to do consistently. And so what I do now is I wake up and I do, at morning and night, I do like a meditation. It's like maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. It really is. And I personally appreciate a non-guided meditation personally. I have enjoyed just sitting there and being quiet and working with my own self. But I know how powerful guided meditations can be, and I look forward to unlocking that in the future. So I wake up in the morning, I do a 5 or 10 minute meditation. I don't time it. I just sort of wait until my body really sinks into what I believe is a meditative state. And I, however long I can. And the importance in something like that is to stick with it. Cause it's huge. It's huge. Like there are some days where for 5 minutes, I think when you write in a journal, it can be similar. It's like getting the sludge out. It's like this gobbledygook. And then, you may get underneath it sometimes and you may not. So I do that in the morning, and then I write out gratitude list. And I just sort of go until I feel like I've dumped out a handful of things that I feel gratitude for. And then that brings me into the affirmations. And so then I go into writing out some affirmations for myself. And occasionally I'll transition that into like a quick to do, some things off to the side of like, okay, these were some of the things that popped into my head while I was working on myself. So I'm going to note them, like call my mom, take out the garbage, like just to sort of get it down.
Right. Yeah.
And then at night, what I do is I cross off my one of my 40-day marks. And I actually decided to do that. I cross off the one for the next day. So I almost like to preempt that I've already done it. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I do another 5 to 10 meditation before I go to bed.
That's great. That's a lot of grounding.
Yeah.
Things that are, and this was new to you, right? Or I think you had a journaling practice before. Because of my whole self-help love of growth, I have always had some form of something, be it waking up and reading from my books, or journaling now and again, but not as much gratitude and affirmations. I wouldn't say that those have been like a huge part of my practice in the past. And meditation, again, has gone in and out. So I can access it. I can kind of come back to it in some way, but I also have, I'm still a beginner. Well, beginner for life.
Right.
Just the fact that you're doing it without any, sticking with these, it needs to be this long. I need to be sitting on a meditation pillow, burning sage. It's like all that shit doesn't matter. Are you doing it? And what are you feeling?
Right. All those things would certainly seem more, like aesthetically and pleasing and beautiful. And like, I strive to get there, but I'm not letting those things get in my way. I sit on a pillow in my bed. So I'm, propped up a little bit. That is it. Sometimes I have my earplugs in from going to bed at night. So it's just a little quieter. Sometimes I even have my eye pillow over my eyes. So it's just a little darker. I can only imagine what it looks like if you walk in, but that I have decided is not a problem.
No, not a problem. Okay. So back to the buffering.
Yeah.
What experiences have been different for you, where normally you would have had a drink? Let's say you're with somebody, a friend, say your boyfriend, or, you're doing something social and you don't have the buffering. What has been some of your experiences?
Well, I have yet to do like a full, let's go out to dinner. I've done going out to lunch and where I would have had a margarita, for example, or I've definitely been in situations where I would have had wine, or my family was over the other night and they were all drinking wine and I was drinking bubbly water. So I have been in those situations, and mostly when it comes to, like, let's say I'm with my boyfriend, and which, like, he'll say something that, or I might be in a situation where I'd be like, oh, I kind of wish that, like, he'd put his arm around me, or there's just less weight put on. I don't know if it's the thought that there's less weight put on, or if it's the expectation that there's less weight put on, but I will just say there's just less weight. Things are just a little cleaner, where your mind is like, again, I go back to that, like, is it, well, I don't know. I was going to say, is it because I was smoking pot? But it's never that. It's never that I was having thoughts like, I wonder if I'm feeling this way because I'm smoking pot. It was more subconscious, but it's so refreshing to just know that it helps you it's like more being who you are. And as I think you mentioned something, which I know you might have to reiterate how you put it, but I knew exactly what you were talking about when you said it. And you even said to me, I'm not sure if this is going to make sense, but it was something along the lines of, you were referring to somebody that you knew who had stopped drinking. And then you said to me something like, there will be fewer times in which don't feel like yourself, or you put it in a way. And I think that there's this idea of like splintering that happens when you're buffering, where you're like, I'm part this, I'm part that, I might be this, could be a little bit of that, as opposed to like, no, this is who I am.
Yes.
Do you remember saying that to me?
I'm trying to remember.
It was
the conversation, and I can sort of riff off that because, and I really like that splintering, that metaphor, because if anything, there isn't all these different sides.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, I actually look forward to social interactions now in a different way, where I'm like, this is me. I don't have to think about anything else, if that makes sense, where because when there's alcohol involved, speaking to that specifically, things can go a lot of different ways. And I was definitely not operating at my best self in those times. And because there was this unknown, which I found exciting, because you're just like, well, what's going to happen? So now it's just like, there's this level of confidence that has emerged as well. Whereas before there was more of a need, there was more of an expectation or a habit of doing something just by default. And I think even though I had that same little voice in my head that you mentioned, like, this is not the best thing. This is not you, like, at your finest, justifying it because social, it's what you do. Or I'm feeling a little bit, maybe there's some uncomfortableness and trying to heighten the moment, trying to get like, make this more exciting, this situation that would be frankly not that exciting. But now it's like things are exciting, but in a much more even way. Like you had said, it's like, it's not these big highs and there's not big lows. The lows are there, but it is like utilizing, tapping into these other tools and other things like that maybe I had done before, but now it's like, that is the go-to.
Yes.
And frankly, without the fog, without the hangovers, I mean, there's so much more space.
Yes. And what I really relate to the heightening the experience. It's like, Yes, yes, yes. But how do I make this more? I mean, you've heard me say it all the time, like, oh, I get bored, or it's like, how do I make this even more, how do I make this more better? That was like, oh, I'm going, like, how could this, it couldn't be just good on its own, or I couldn't just be good.
Yes.
Online.
Yes.
And
that's it.
Yeah. And it's very, like you said, it's confidence producing, and it's very refreshing to be like, oh, I guess it's really a lot simpler it's just simpler. I think maybe it's a lot simpler. You know what else is simpler? You don't have to go find your wine at the grocery store, or you don't have to get your wheat. Like there's like an extra simplicity of like one less thing to do.
Yes.
And I do think it's important that we say, I can't speak for you and you can't speak for me, but like neither of us are saying for the rest of my life, I am going substance free and sober forever. That is not the goal, has not been the goal. But what is the goal is to learn what we're learning and to be curious about what's underneath that. And really, I think what you started to show me and say is that when something is it's having one drink a night, fine. Okay, fine. When it's when it is so as habitual as you're brushing teeth, then you've got to ask yourself, is that there because am I choosing that? And why am I choosing that? And then the other thing is when people say your smallest, big choices or big things happen because of small actions. Well, if I'm going to say like, oh, it's not really impacting, like nobody has to know that I'm smoking pot every night, or it's not who's that really impacting? Well, it's impacting me, and it's ultimately, I'd say, energetically impacting what you would allow what you could fill that space with otherwise.
Yes. And I love that you brought up the energetic side of things, because if there is a dull factor, you're dulling your vibration. Yeah. And a lot of the spiritual teachers and, I think because I'm noticing it a lot more. Oh, that person doesn't drink, or this person that I look up to, whoever they are. So I'm just more aware of it, but generally it's like, it dulls your light. Yeah, a bit. It does. So I think that's the thing, is experiencing your light, not being dulled is kind of that's part of the beauty of it, really, is to just try on a new perspective. And then choose it. I think it's like taking your power back. Yep. So what's next for you? You've got these 40 days ahead. Now you've got, that's how bad at math I am. Is it 25?
Oh, something like that. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. October 3rd, I think, is when we talked about.
So one quick question though. Are you counting, like, are you in that, what phase are you in? Is it like, okay, counting down the days and sort of? No. Okay.
I mean, I tend to, I did take it. What I was going to say is I tend to not focus as much. Like you helped me put an end date to, or the 40 days I emulated you, which of course you took well beyond that, but you were the one who said, okay, let's look at what date that is. It's October 3rd. We had equal difficulty figuring out the math. And then what I did was I sort of figured, 40 days is going to feel like a long time. So I'll look at the calendar at some point and realize how far I've gone. But then I decided to be a little more deliberate with it and just have my, I don't have it in front of me, otherwise I'd show it. It's just like a piece of paper that I put 40 boxes on, and it just says 40 days. And I figured if my kids asked, what is this? I could say I'm meditating for 40 days. Because I am. And I did. And so then I X off as I said, I X off the night before. So I think, okay, like I'm not going to drink tomorrow, or I'm not going to smoke tomorrow. So I'm going to X.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's been I still feel like 40 days is going to be a while. So
it is definitely.
And now my birthday comes up on September 22nd. So it'll be really interesting to be, those are times, in the past to be like, oh, I'll do it after my birthday or, so that'll be interesting. And I mean, not like, I don't know, at 44, it's not like you're like, I'm going to a rave, but
still it's a form of celebration,
yes.
You celebrate with these things.
And like going to a restaurant. Oh, I have done that. Once I went to a restaurant and I would have normally ordered a cocktail and I ordered a lemonade. And I was like, who the fuck is this?
Who am I?
Was like, this is so like that piece was a little painful. I was like, God, I would love to order. And then, you realize those moments come and they go.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that. Like the fear and the, deprivation or anything like that. Did you have any initial,
No. Well, one thing I also ought to say is that I still have alcohol in my house, and it never even occurred to me to get rid of it in order to do this, because it's not, like I said, that isn't my, I'm not tempted to reach for that.
You trust yourself.
I trust myself.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to, I remember somebody came into my house and I was like, yeah, I'm not drinking. And they're like, well, it's funny because all I see is a bar right there. I was like, well, I'm not touching it. But with the pot, it's way more of a, okay, if this were here, I have to say that I think I'm doing work enough to know that I wouldn't touch it, but that I don't trust myself to the same degree.
Okay. And after this 40 days, okay, you don't know, but do you think you potentially could have it around and just pick it up if you wanted to?
I can't say for sure, but I want to say like my initial feeling is that I don't need to have pot in my life. That's like my initial feeling. Alcohol, I'm also open to not for a while too, but I really don't know. I think what I could do with alcohol is I could easily start to fold that back into my life a little bit and see what happens and go, oh God, no, I actually don't like that at all. And trust myself to stop again if I didn't like the feeling of that. But I really don't know. It has so much more to do with the confidence that you can do it without it.
Yes.
I know I can go out to dinner and not have a cocktail. That means that I can choose that. Or I know I can go to a restaurant and have a glass of wine and I could choose that. I don't feel or didn't feel with the pot that it was much of a choice. It was like, oh no, that will be right.
Yes.
Immediately.
Again, it's much more of an ingrained habit. Sounds like it's for so many years and a bit of your identity, ask about that too quickly. Like your identity was tied up with, again, that rebellious side. So has that been difficult to kind of like remove yourself from that?
Well, I want to make one caveat, not because I think I need to, but I guess I do, which is that I tended to smoke when my kids were either asleep or not around. But that doesn't mean it wasn't impacting me when my kids were awake. That was the other thing. It's like, I think people think that if they do something and nobody really knows about it, it's really like, did the tree make a noise when it fell in the forest if nobody was there, or whatever that saying is.
Yeah.
Again, energetically, is it making a change? Is it changing you? And also mood-wise, is it changing you?
Yeah.
And so anyway, I wanted to make that caveat. But
that's good. I think a lot of people justify it. So you're pointing that out because, again, it's just another layer of it's okay because, and I'm going to do it because.
And what I'm learning is that my kids and being a mom is fucking hard no matter,
no matter how hard you buffer.
They can do something that like great. Yes. And like they can do something that grates on my nerves. And I'm like, okay, at least I know that that's not because I'm hungover. Or at least I know that's because, at least I know that's just because they're annoying. My darlings. So you had asked about identity and what, go back to what you had asked me. I'm sorry.
Oh, just the identity about, let's say the pot smoking as, yes, you're a mom, you have that as part of your identity because it's something you do. You have friends. That's what you do together.
Yes.
So is that something that you're catching yourself and having to go, that's not me anymore. This isn't what I do.
So the idea of things being kind of not monotonous, but sustained and kind of consistent, like that, in my past, I may have associated that with boredom and routine and monotony and homogenization and, like, you know, the antithesis of what I want.
Yeah.
You know, the absence of the edge. I love how you're like, you know, you're a mom and that's what you do with your friends. It's like, yeah, mom. I mean, it's true.
I meant smoking weed.
Oh, you did? I thought you meant what you do is with your friends, is you're a mom.
No.
Okay.
Like, you have certain friends with that's what you do as a social.
That is like, and we just go geek out on like whatever comes out of our mouths about how we're going to like save the planet. Not really, but like, you know, just like really kind of great, fun conversations. And that was always something I was afraid to miss.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's not still a part of some days where I'm just like, oh God, that it would be hard to miss, you know, you miss things.
Yeah, definitely.
But wherever I was going was pointing out that this idea of things being too even was like was a fear of mine. Even in commitments in a relationship, in a job, in a like mom in Mill Valley, like, do not associate me with that.
Yeah.
I am like, you know, I'm like a lady about town. But I remember my mom saying to me one time, this is a little bit separate about buffering, but like I was dating men who were lovely, but were like not available. And they were like, be everywhere, but, you know,
Available,
but like also you know, sort of your classic, like mom, dad, suburbia.
Oh, okay.
And she's just like, I think you think that you're not that, but
you're in denial.
You're in denial. She's like, you have 2 kids, a job, a house. Like, you can't be 50 other places. You're a little more mundane than you think you are. Was basically what she was saying, which is a pill that I am learning to swallow and learning to understand and learning to have peace with. And in my relationship, in my work, in mothering, things that I have typically actually pushed up against as just like a no, don't make me, yes, I'm a mom, but don't actually make me a mom. And that has been a struggle for a long time. And I would say that this is helping me, you know, like we said, get out of some of the highs and the lows and find some more peace in the consistency. And so I'm working on that. And
this is huge.
Yeah.
So, and I think so many people can relate to you. Yeah. And it's, again, it's like you're chasing the high. Okay. Quite literally, but again, chasing something outside of your reality.
Yeah.
Which is the definition of buffering, part of it. And so now you're coming to peace with where you are, who you are, what you're doing. And can you create that high for yourself?
In a completely, you know, in a way, one of the things, we only know what we know. And so I only knew the type of high that I would get from smoking weed. I don't know the high one gets from not using substances. I heard those crazy people I would hear say like, oh, like we said,
I'm life.
Happier now than I ever was. And I'd be like, okay. But I'm willing to, I started to say, okay, well, if what I'm doing isn't getting me the result, like the work we would do around, okay, where's Simone 2.0, 3.0, comedy, stage, creativity, like if that feels stuck to me and I don't know how to move that forward in this moment, what other what other boulders can I remove that might inch me and like reveal something I didn't know was there, reveal a certain type of high that you can get, or, the joy one can experience. Like, let's just see if it's possible to have that. People say there is, and I guess I'll try to find out.
And so far, what's your thought?
I mean, again, I want to say that the joys come from the joy is, at least for me in my stage of where I'm at, the joy is around the pride I have that I'm doing something good for myself. It really is much more. The confidence seems to come. I'm sure the confidence is in part being released because there's less holding it back. But the confidence also, and the pride that one has in themselves is honestly, it's like doing something good for yourself. And then you're just like, oh, and you've said this, showing up for yourself, like making a promise, your 40 days of live. It's like, if I show up and I do this, I have told myself that I can depend on myself. And that was part of this for me. Like, if you have told yourself you can do this in a less ambiguous way in the past and a more definitive and direct, like, this is what I'm going after, then you will have more trust in yourself and more confidence. And every time I don't reach for a glass of wine or a weed, I'm just a tiny bit more confident.
Simone, this has been amazing, as usual. And I admire you. I'm so proud of you.
Thank
and
you,
I'm so excited for you. I mean,
I'd not be doing it if you had not been leading the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
See you soon.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy the show, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts. It makes a big difference for visibility. And even better, share this episode with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode every other Wednesday. If you're interested in working together to elevate your online presence, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me on Instagram at whereiswillow. I also hang out on LinkedIn, Willow McDonough. Until then, cheers to carving your own fucking path. I love you.